What's up, guys? Welcome back to Echoing Theology. This is the third episode. I am extremely excited. This is the first guy we've interviewed in Echo, so this is awesome. Welcome, David. How's it going,
No,
man?
no, it's been great. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for considering inviting me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your yes. Um, so I don't know if you're familiar with what we're doing here, but basically we're just trying to get out the news of what Echo is from the perspective not just of the great Scott Boyle or those on staff, but those really kind of on the ground, in the parishes and the schools, things like that. So just trying to give some perspective of the different types of ministry that we might do. So.
For sure. No, it sounds like a great. I wish we had that when we were going into it. It'd been good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. I think they do a really good job with recruiting. So,
They
um,
do. They do.
themselves out there. So, um, I felt very much like it was really I felt like we were really connected, and that they were really trying to build this relationship. But I think this type of thing would have been a little helpful, just kind of hearing what the day to day is for, I know you're in a different diocese than I'm in, and we have friends in other parts of the country that all do different
Mhm.
ministries, and we're going to get into that. But I think it may have been helpful just to hear those perspectives maybe a little bit more.
For sure. For sure.
Cool. So, David, so yeah, welcome to Echoing Theology. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, that'd be a great place to start.
Sure, of course. So I'm originally from Dumfries, Virginia. So that's what, about 45 minutes on a very good day from DC. Uh, if you're lucky. Usually it might take an hour and a half, but if you can find the right lane, perfect. But I'm also a military brat, so I've moved around quite a bit. Fun fact, I've only really been in two states that I've actually lived longer than a year, and that's Colorado and Virginia now. So those just moving around and adapting to new environments has really been a blessing, especially for Echo when you're thrust into a new position in a place where you did not expect. I did not expect to be stationed here in Fall River, Massachusetts, up north. I think we're the most northern diocese currently in the
Echo,
states.
yeah, definitely.
So it's been nice, and it's nice to see the New England part of it. And I guess we'll get a bit more into the diocese in general, but yeah, no, military brat from Virginia. I got a master's in history, so this will be my second master's that I'm going to be achieving through ECHA will be a theology. And I went to, as I'm sure your listeners have probably heard from you personally, you went to the Mount. I also went to the Mount, so go Mounties. Uh, so I received my undergraduate in philosophy and then my master's in applied history, specifically focusing on European history from George Mason University. And then the hope is, God willing, I finish out ECHO is to receive this master's in theology.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
Virginia is a good place. I had a military. I had a cousin. I think he's currently stationed in San Diego for his second time in San Diego.
Mhm.
But he was in Virginia Beach for about 3 years.
Oh, nice.
So,
That's a beautiful place. Expensive, but beautiful.
I mean, if you're placed there, kind of like Echo, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you can be placed in nice places here with the program. So,
for
uh,
sure.
it's kind of like
100%.
the military. So, not
Yeah,
saying
spiritual military. There you go.
spiritual military. There we go. Um,
Hmm.
no, that's good. So, how did you? We're definitely going to get into some Mount stuff just because we have that, connection. Shout out to Professor Annadale, um, and all the other professors, of course, in the seminary
Hmm.
and things. But um, so specifically on Echo, how did you initially find out about Echo? How'd you hear about it?
Yes. So funny story. I did not hear about it from my own research. I heard about it from my sister and then my mom relating what my sister told her. So my sister is currently a junior at Notre Dame. So she was just perusing the websites. I think her early sophomore, late freshman year, and she stumbled upon the Echo website and said, "Oh, this sounds like my brother. He'd really benefit from doing this program." And sent it my way to my mom. My mom looked at it. She's like, "Oh, I agree." Sent it to me, and I was like, "Oh, did not foresee this coming." For me, it was just do my history, whether that be teaching, do museum curation, or PhD doctorate in history. This kind of threw a curveball in it, a happy curveball. But I was like, oh, I've always wanted to serve the church. And then this provided the avenue for it, discerned a bit, and then took the plunge.
Very good. Yeah. One thing I think we've probably noticed is we've all heard about Echo through different ways, right? Especially those of us that
Mhm.
weren't at Notre Dame. Um, yeah, I think it's very interesting how we've all gotten here. Um,
It's definitely Providence. It's
for sure.
mhm.
For sure. And yeah, I know you love history, and I definitely do want to get into that a little bit, especially
Sure, sure.
kind of going back to the Mount piece. So for those of you that don't know, Mount St. Mary's Seminary, and it's now university, right? Mount
Mount
St.
St. Mary's University, and then the Mount
Right,
St. Mary's Seminary. Mhm.
right. Yeah, so the seminary, it's very unique. The seminary is on the university campus.
Mhm.
We're very, very close to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So we're like 5 minutes. If you're coming in from Gettysburg, PA, you're 5, 10 minutes into Maryland,
Five,
roughly,
10 minutes into Maryland, roughly.
something
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, maybe 15. Uh, on Route 15. Yeah, Route 15.
Yep, Route 15.
Uh, dude, I can't tell you how many deer I saw on Route 15 in
Oh
October.
yeah, there's a lot of deer stories from just people I knew at the Mount.
Yeah.
Someone, God bless him, hit a deer and almost it completely wrecked his car. The deer was fine. It just totaled the car. I was like, oh,
That's not
what kind
funny, but
of deer are God bless that he's okay, but
for sure.
yeah, I was like, what kind of deer is growing over there? But uh,
My my best friend sent me a picture about a year and a half ago of he said this deer hit his car or his sister's car. It hit his sister's car, and the deer just like came out of nowhere. It's almost like it fell out of the sky kind of thing.
mm.
So it's just, yeah, deer are funny. So there's a lot of deer by the mount, but going back to history, so those of you that don't know, like I said, it's about 15 minutes from Gettysburg. Gettysburg is a very prominent area for the Civil War, right? So did you ever visit Gettysburg? I would assume you visited.
Yes, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Cool.
Um, yeah, that was more of the first time. So I went even before I heard of the Mount when I was young. Uh, took a day, not a couple of day trips up to Pennsylvania to see Gettysburg with my family. That's how I kind of get my love for history. It's just from my family. My mom in particular would take us every place we went to when we moved or when we were going on road trips. Her big thing was going to museums and going to the famous historical sites of that area.
Yeah,
So when we were going through Pennsylvania, I forget why we were going through. Like, well, we got to go see Gettysburg. So we did the full car tour. So there's a big disc. I'm not sure if you're aware of the tour, the audio tour.
I'm fairly familiar. Yeah,
Yeah, no, we did the whole thing, and it was fantastic, but it was just long.
yeah.
Um, and then it's a great place to go running, um,
Oh, for sure.
to just ponder. It's a great place to just ponder and sit there and think about how far we've come
Yeah,
or how far we have not come. And that's a completely, we could table that discussion, but it's a good place just to reflect. Certainly had a lot of good philosophical discussions there with some of my philosophy cohorts, but no, beautiful place.
yeah. It's a really good place. There was one day we were there because I used to go visit. There's a lot of stuff I would go visit,
Mm,
around the mount. But the sunrise in Gettysburg is very nice on the main field there.
mhm.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but really, really nice area. Um, cool. So yeah, going back to Echo, if you could just tell us a little bit about your placement and what you do, because you said you're in the Diocese of Fall River, which is part of the Archdiocese of Boston, my home archdiocese.
Yeah, so that's a nice little connection. So originally, historically, I guess I kind of have to do it now. Uh, the Diocese of Fall River was part of the Archdiocese of Boston, just because this particular, it's weird, this diocese, it's all over the place. But it works in tandem with the Archdiocese of Boston. My mentor, he does not work where I work. He works for the Archdiocese. So
Mhm.
he goes to Boston all the time while I just work in Attleboro. So it's about a 45-minute commute from where I'm currently living in Fall River. Um, but that's completely fine. I've been gracious enough to have a great pastor who pays for my gas, so that's no problem driving the 45 minutes to and from work. Um,
Is that one way?
one way, 45 minutes one way.
Okay.
And the back roads, so Route 118 is fantastic. It bypasses all the highways, the traffic. Providence is just horrible.
Yeah.
Try not to. I avoid it. I don't know if you heard. There was a big bridge that goes from Providence to Massachusetts. It broke down. Uh,
Really?
yes, yes. So it's been under repair for the past couple months now. It broke down before Christmas.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I remember going to work. I said, "Oh, I'll just take the highway today." It says it's 30 minutes. I'm like, "Oh, I'll trust it. 30 minutes. I'll get to work on time, 30 minutes early, be fantastic." No, no, it completely shut down the entire, like it was backed up all the way to almost here in Fall River,
Oh my
just
goodness.
because the bridge was done. And the reason they discovered it was apparently they haven't been checking the nuts and bolts of it for 70 plus years. And finally, when they decided to check, they're like, oh, shoot, it's corroded. It's not doing so hot. We better fix it. So they diverted all the traffic to the right side. So
Sure.
instead of having four lanes, you now just have one lane going back and forth each way. So it's tough, but I don't go that rate anyway. So,
Sure.
but to moving back to the diocese and my current placement. I'm at St. John the Evangelist in Attleboro, Massachusetts. Um, it is a coalition, or I should say, a fusion of two other parishes within Attleboro. This is the first year, really, after COVID, where it's become a single parish. So it used to be uh, Holy Ghost Parish, St. Vincent de Paul Parish, but unfortunately, all those dissipated with COVID. So they all just merged into St. John's.
Hmm.
And if you want, I can get into just the discrepancies and the way that the communities not necessarily fight with each other, but they it's like pulling hair and pulling teeth, uh, trying to get them to get along, especially the Portuguese. They very much believe in their own way.
Yeah.
Um, Father decided to do away with the Portuguese mass at the 8 a.m. on Sundays because only about 27 people showed up. So he's like, well, that's not good mass attendance for
Hmm.
every Sunday at the 8 a.m. So he got rid of it. It's now 100 something, 200 people at the 8 a.m. It's fantastic if it's just English, but the Portuguese aren't too happy with that decision. Um, but nevertheless, it's essentially still three parishes in one. We're in a transition phase right now.
Right.
So I'm a jack of all trades worker. So
Hmm.
I have a lot of freedom to do what I want to do, whether that be like you starting a podcast or doing episodes or whatnot. All the power to you. I'm doing more class based stuff. So I help run the RCA program with the youth in particular. So I have right now we're very small. I'm working with two young gentlemen. One's a junior in high school, and another's a senior in high school. They both decided I feel like Catholicism is the right thing to do. I'm going to try it. I'm like, oh, impressive. Um, and the junior in particular, and I'm his sponsor, uh,
Okay.
has a he's been really kind of picking at the priesthood. He's like, I want this is really interesting. I want to try it. This looks I didn't know the priests were doing all these. I didn't know they managed their own bank accounts. I didn't know they had their own house. I didn't know they had to take all this. I like helping people. This is great. I was like, oh, he's one of those converts. Great. But no, it's fascinating discussions. I run a spiritual reading group, so that's the thing that I've created here at St. John's. That's luckily been blasting off. It's been great.
Very good.
Um, it was more of it came out of an idea of Bible study, and they have this. Um, I can't think of the word. Let's just say secular book club. I was like, well, I want to attract both of those and see if I can't get them to merge because they don't get along.
Mm.
So like I'll try that. So that happened in Lent. So I'm going to try it at Lent. We're going to have Lenten sessions and Advent sessions. Excuse me. So it was Advent first and then Lent. And Advent went fantastic. And then they're like, yeah, we want Lenten ones. So my next reading or my next class will be not this week, but next week on Nathaniel Hawthorne and the birthmark. I don't know if you've ever read that story.
I haven't read. I've heard it. I just haven't read. There's a
Mhm.
lot of books on my shelf, as you can see.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Before I
Yeah, I
knock.
have a couple of them. The Pope
Yeah,
Benedict one, the gold one, right?
yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus of Nazareth. Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
I was gonna read it for Lent, but with taking other classes and things, I more or less decided that it's probably best not to take on more reading as a penance.
Right.
So we went with something else. Um, but no, that's good. I did want to ask you about that book club that I just wanted to kind of check in with you on that. So it's good to
Sure,
hear that
sure.
that's really going.
No,
That's
it's
really
been going
thriving.
really well. And then I might be now coming into next semester, next year. Looks like I'll be taking over the Bible study as well. So our main Bible study guy is moving to Pennsylvania in the Poconos.
Okay.
So, and he's been at the Bible study leader for 10 plus years. So I'm like, oh, and he's very knowledgeable. And he's a Notre Dame fan. So when he heard that I was a Notre Dame student, he's like, oh, perfect. You watch college football? That's all we talk about is that. So I'm like, I got to make sure I stay up to date with everything.
Hey, they won the
But
championship for lacrosse last year, so I'm a big football guy, but like also shout out to the lacrosse team too, you know. So
was that the men's or the women's?
uh, I think
We'll
it
chalk it up to Notre Dame lacrosse. We'll just say it like that.
we can yeah we can fact check later. But no, that's good. I'm glad to hear that that's really going
Mhm,
well
mhm.
for you. So I just kind of want to add one thing because I'm curious. So those of you that don't know, a lot of the Northeast, I don't know about other parts of the country. I can tell you kind of in the South, really, where I am in Houston, we don't have this issue, or not issue. We don't have this setup is probably a better term. I'm not sure about you in Virginia, and but I know for certain like Boston, my home diocese, Portland, Maine, New Hampshire, we have parishes that are clusters, and basically clusters are like three, either three parishes or three physical churches build one parish. And so those communities are usually taken over by like one pastor, or they might do like two pastors. I know there's a very specific parish in uh, the Archdiocese of Indianapolis that's doing two, like they have two co-pastors right now. I don't know how that's going, but um, like historically, a lot of these churches. So looking at like Portland, Maine, my home parish, we used to have seven physical churches in the city, and they were all within like 10 miles of each other. One was a French church, one was Portuguese, one was Italian, one was um, Irish, so they all were territorial. And as the generations and the years have gone on and the parishes weren't able to sustain financially to be supported, they just became one parish more or less. And so now we have five. My hometown now has five physical churches, three towns. It's one parish and it's run by a pastor, parochial vicar, or two parochial vicars, two hospital chaplains. And we also have the diocesan exorcist, I think, and Spanish ministry uh, pastor. Um, Boston's kind of like that too. So just that's kind of giving a little bit of background to maybe why your two or three churches are now one coming together.
Mhm. No,
And
thank you, Dale. That's a nice summary, a nice synopsis.
yeah,
Good background information. Mhm.
yeah. So did you find that that was the case when you were growing up in Virginia or?
At least I think this will be my seventh year living in Virginia, that I've noticed it's more so. I'm from the Diocese of Arlington, so it's a pretty big diocese.
Sure.
We're very fortunate that we're pretty cohesive. Um, I mean, there's some parishes that are outliers that do cluster up and form together. But from COVID, we actually remain pretty strong
Okay.
just because of how dense Northern Virginia is. Like, well, and stubborn Virginians too. They're like, yeah, no, we're just gonna go to mass anyway, especially the Spanish.
Mhm.
The Spanish speaking is just like, yeah, no, we want that community,
Right.
that personalization. So they didn't lose it that much, especially my parish where I'm from, Our Lady of Angels um, in Virginia. It's fantastic. They had a new leadership, and it's took off. It maintained in COVID time. So it was unique to see here in Massachusetts the way that it clusters.
Yeah.
Uh, and it makes sense historically speaking. I mean, it's Massachusetts. It's old. It's historically
Yeah.
different groups of people. I mean, where I'm living right now, I'm living in an old rectory. So
Yeah.
what you see behind me is essentially the only master bedroom. So I live with two other community members, two female community members.
Mhm.
So I'm living on the bottom floor. This is a three floor rectory, where they would house, of course, the priests. And right across from us is a school, and it's Saint Stanislaus Church Parish slash school. So it's just for, I think, pre-K through elementary school. I mean, it's not a big school, but there's certainly a lot of traffic in the morning. But no, Fall River, you have the Polish area where I'm currently living. You will go a bit further, you have the Irish. You go back this way, or you go a bit south, it's
Mhm.
Portuguese.
That
The
sounds right.
Pol, yeah, it's mostly just Portuguese here in Fall River.
Yeah.
But the Polish, at least on the road that I live on, it's all Polish. There's no Portuguese, it's just Polish. There's a great pierogi place right down the street. So
Yeah.
if I have extra cash, I'm like, oh, I don't feel like cooking today. I'll walk down there, get a bag of pierogies. I'm like, perfect, and go back home. But
That's good.
yeah. Mhm.
That's good. So how's community life? Uh,
Mhm.
how's that experience been?
It's been good. It's been good. Having At first I was a little concerned, having two community members of the opposite gender living together, right? That's
Yeah.
at least my first initial gut instinct hearing that about Echo. And I'm sure those who would be willing watching this interview or this episode might have the same concerns, like, oh, aren't I going into the near occasion of sin here, right? Uh, it's difficult. Well, in my case in particular, I live on a completely separate floor. I live on very unique terms with the two community members that I'm with. So we don't really see each other a lot during the week because our schedules just line up. One of my community members, she has like an hour and some change commute to and from work. So I hardly ever see her save for community nights or on the weekends. And even then, she's off doing her own thing. So I get it. And from both sides of the argument, where like, okay, I see where you would be coming from if you want a sole gender community. There's
Yeah.
a lot of benefits from that, and a lot of benefits from mixed communities as well. And I think Echo does a good job of mitigating that risk. Certainly, the previous community had a lot of issues relationship wise, within dating, and that just did not work out.
Sure.
Um,
And that can happen.
it can happen, but I'm not dissuading anyone from community life. The intentional faith community that Echo builds
Yeah.
within the program itself, especially at summertime to get to know your community members, it's all built on trust and respect. So I wouldn't worry too much about the mixed gender of it all. Echo does a really good job of kind of separating that, if that makes sense. I don't
It
know
does.
about you and your particular, because you're the opposite of me. You
Yeah,
might
I'm
be
the op. So I live with one guy and one woman, but from the perspective of one woman living with two guys, I think it can be different. And I think your point too is like, okay, but also asking like, what is the mission here? Is our mission to be roommates, or is our mission to be servants of the church? And I think it's that second piece that I want to also clarify. I think Echo does a really good job initially of your placements and like who you live within community. They take a lot of things into account. That's at least the experience for me. I know we've had other groups before that have had issues with each other, and so personalities that can happen, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But I think they've done a really good job of placing us, and so like we don't worry about things. We also communicate about boundaries and things like that. Of just like, here's what we can talk about. Here's maybe if myself and the woman I live with is in the house by ourselves and our roommate's gone, maybe, or vice versa, I'm gone and he's there, maybe we shouldn't have a conversation one-on-one about, whatever topics might arise. But if we're all there, then that there's a middle person there that can maybe
Mhm.
mitigate that
The
conversation,
risk, right? The
mediate that
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
yeah,
But it is certainly an awkward thing, I think, to explain. But
for sure. It's hard to talk about, especially since you're living in it,
yeah,
to put into words.
sure. I'm
And
sure you get along with Matt
again,
really well. Like you can relate in that sense.
a little, yeah, yeah. Though I can't deal with the heat over down there in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But no, and I'm
Our AC
sure.
stopped working last night, so that was fun.
Oof, oof. Yeah, no, here we don't even have AC and just keep the windows open.
Yep.
It's been rainy and windy the past couple days, and this is a whole aside, but it's been
Spring.
horrendous. It's spring. It's tough. Flooding happened yesterday. Luckily, I got home just in time.
Yep.
But community life. It you have to work at it. I feel you have to put in the time, put in the effort, and then eventually you'll get your community. Just like, oh, you'll get that kind of sibling relationship. You'll know exactly what buttons to push, what buttons not to push. Um, and you get that sibling kind of energy if you work hard at it, if you truly care for the people that you are in community with.
Yeah.
I certainly can experience that, and living and being an older brother of two younger sisters, it's kind of just prepared me for that naturally.
Yeah.
So at least for me, it wasn't hard of a transition to be with two females, especially being the oldest, I think, of the two.
Yeah.
Um, so it's fine. I know this was made public knowledge, I think yesterday, but maybe we can talk about it a bit more.
Sure.
The way
If
that
you'd
community.
like to. Yeah.
Okay, sure, sure. I'll mention it very briefly, but community can change. Um, you don't really know exactly what life is going on for each person, but you're there to support. And at least in my community's case, we'll be missing one member next year, and that's because she just decided she discerned out. I think of it more like this is a vocation, right? So you have to discern whether or not you want to continue. If that's not what God's calling you to do, then do what God is calling you to do. And in this case, she decided, as much as she loves Echo, and
Hmm.
she'll say that to the moon and back, uh, she wants to do what God calls her to do. I can't be anything but happy for her, but
Sure.
that's kind of where I'll leave it. Is
Yeah.
you develop a relationship where you really can understand where the other person's coming from.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think you spend a lot of time together over the summer, so we all kind of grow to care for one another, but it's emphasized even more once you get to your communities, once you get to your placement, because you're
Mhm.
spending much more time with those people than the people that you do in your initial summer, at least. And so yeah, it can certainly change. Um, so yeah, I guess what's been the best part of Echo, and maybe what's been a challenge that you have found in Echo?
The best part of Echo, besides kind of the amazing education and opportunities to work in the church, I mean, that's a given. And that's what attracted to me in the first place was this opportunity. But I would hands down say it's the relationship building. Uh, just with our class, Echo 20, I've built the foundations of lifelong friendships that will continue. Um, and that's hands down the best part of Echo for me. Disregarding, of course, everything else, but having like-minded individuals come together to work for something greater than themselves, it's just amazing. And I try not to take it for granted, because it's hard to find a group of people like like this that are hardworking and they truly care about what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Um, yeah, the friendship piece I think is really really important to note. I think I got a photo with you up here on my bookshelf somewhere. I can't see it at the moment, but um, yeah, because we we went to the superhero museum over
Oh,
the summer,
yes,
and that was
yes.
really really fun. Which I'm not going to spoil that for anybody because you should
No, I
totally
might. So
do that. I'm thinking
future
about going
Echo
again.
21s, I'll be leading that again. I'll make that an offer. I'll go again, maybe make it an annual thing, and then I could pass the torch on to someone else
You
who wants
can.
to make that like 30, 40 minute drive. It's not bad, and it's out there in the middle of nowhere. You're like,
It's
oh,
fun.
it is fun. It is fun.
Yep.
And maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you'll see someone famous. I don't know.
You might. I mean, we saw some autographed pictures of like Tom Welling, who played Superman on Smallville, things like that. So uh,
Hmm.
you never know. But yeah, we should totally go again. Lead the 21s. When you decide to do that, let me know, and we'll be
We'll
in
do. We'll
we'll be
do.
in the loop. So what's been a challenge maybe that you found in Echo?
Challenge. Again, maybe going on to the relationship part, kind of keeping on that concept. It's the distance too, that you make these really deep friendships really fast throughout the Echo summer, which is what, 6 weeks, give or take,
It's eight in total,
or
but
8.
classes are six. It's like 7.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 7.5 weeks. It's a long time, but also it's very short. And then you're off. The best friend, let's say, that you've made, or a couple best friends that you made, they're just not gone out of your life, but physically they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, shoot, son of a gun. As much as I love my community members, and let's say that you're lucky enough to have one of them as the good friend that you develop friendships with, uh, they're kind of gone. And I'm not discounting any other relationships too here in Echo 20. I think I'm friends with almost everyone there. So that's just been a complete blessing and new to me in my own life. So that's a blessing, but
Yeah.
just tough once you realize, oh, all I can really do is just call or text, or
Mhm.
in this case, a Zoom meeting, which is great,
Sure.
but nothing beats in person. So I would say that's a difficulty or a challenge that I found, is just balancing those relationships. And then more practically as well, balancing kind of class and work. So in this case, I'm taking the Gospel of John, the Johannine literature class, as because I decided to torture myself a little bit. It's been fantastic. I would highly recommend, but it's tough balancing all the responsibilities you have as uh, either your Echo Parish track, which I neglected to mention. I am part of the parish track. I am not a teacher, um, but it is tough. But I've been very thankful, very lucky to have a placement that allows me to do both fairly reasonably. Uh, so I guess that's the two biggest challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's real. All in the Lord's hands. But yeah, no, that's good to know. Just for those coming in, it's just good to be aware of like these are things that do happen, right? Like there's no perfect way of managing this, but um, again, I think that also goes back to that concept, though, maybe of really putting in time for these friendships, right? Like you
Mhm.
can build friends over the summer and continue with those friendships, but to build any type of relationship, you have to continue to try to build it, right? If, call, text, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. Um, one thing we did over the winter retreat too was like, my community members, we all had a conversation one night. And we said, hey, let's like, please don't take it personally. I really like spending time with you guys, but I want to go spend time that week with the other people that I haven't seen
Mhm.
in 6 months.
Yeah, no, that was the exact same conversation I had with my community members. Though my brain was a bit scatterbrained that whole week. Uh, for those watching this episode, I've already told this story to Dale. I lost my luggage for like a good half of that retreat in the wintertime, which good news, Echo 21s, and those who are potentially applying to Echo. Echo's changing the flight from Chicago to South Bend. They're looking at changing that kind of transition flight to I think Charlotte, I believe. That way you miss the snow. So that's all because of what happened to me and a few other Echo community members. So I guess a little something came out of my suffering for missing my bags for a good couple days. But no, the retreat was great.
Yeah, no, it
Uh,
was a good time. It was a good time. I think we're probably a lot of us are going to probably do that over the summer as well. But we can probably get into that another time. I don't think we need to talk about that now. But
mhm.
so just one other question that I want to play a quick game with you before we wrap up.
Sure.
Look at that, I got an email coming through. That's always nice.
Work.
Work stuff, always. So what advice would you give to somebody
Mm,
maybe not applying to, well, yeah, maybe what is some advice that you would give to somebody either applying to Echo or considering applying to Echo?
sure. This is a great question. And I would personally, it's I know it's very cliche, but you have to be patient, and I would say offer it up to God in the silence of your heart. Again, it's cliche, like, oh, I hear that all the time from spiritual directors. I hear that in homilies. I hear this from people that I care about. Like, just be patient, offer it to God, take it seriously. I find that in my own experience that you can't really be scared of the silence and the uncertainty. Uh, that's the important step, I feel like, in the discernment process, as well as finding out what your vocation is that silence and that kind of uncertainty of what you might do next. That's natural, that's normal. If you don't have that, that's a great blessing. That means you know exactly what you want to do, and I envy you a little bit in that way. But have courage and have trust that God will place the right people, the right situations that will aid you in that discernment. You just have to be open to it. You have to pay attention. You have to think on the silence, I think, is where it really comes in. Is I realized in my own discovery that I wanted to do echo was I had to silence all my own thoughts about, do I want to stay? So I also worked as a special ed instructor too, as a part-time job. So do I want to continue this education part where I want to work with these kids? It's fantastic. I love it. But that was just my own busyness thoughts. Like, oh, I want to get a career in this, just keep thinking and thinking about different things. Just stillness is, I think, your best friend. It's uncomfortable, but it's the best.
Sure.
And then prayer as well.
Mhm.
And just another kind of stereotypical answer, but just have courage, have faith. Um, yeah, I think that's my answer for
Good.
that
Yeah, no,
hard question.
no, that's great. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of advice that can be taken, but I think exactly what you just said could also be applied. We were talking before the recording about a mutual friend of ours. Uh, that 10-day period where you're waiting can certainly be a suffering time as well. Like I remember last year, I was panicking.
Mhm.
I felt so bad. Like, but I was a teacher at that time, and there were a couple days where I was like checking my email every 15 minutes, and I was mentally checking out from my students because I was so concerned with me, 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 me. And then I also had to wait an extra 7 days because I made the wait list, and then they were like, "We'll let you know in a week." So
Mhm.
I didn't
Mhm.
have to wait 10 days. I waited 17 days.
Yeah,
So
that really put that last test on you.
they did, but
Yeah.
Chuck gave me a call on St. Patty's Day, and so
Oh,
that was really nice.
that's a great blessing.
So
Oh no, Saints feast day no less.
exactly. All right, so David, I want to play a really quick game with you. I
All
did
right,
send
let's
you
do
these
it.
questions, but I'm going to ask you a question, and then you just give me the quickest answer possible. You ready?
Alrighty,
All right,
perfect. Let's do
here we
it.
go. Favorite building on campus at Notre Dame?
Ooh, the library,
Emmitsburg or Boston food?
Boston food. Just in
Just
general, like
food that
my
you've had in Boston
experience.
before, yeah.
Yeah, Boston food.
Okay.
Yeah,
Summer, fall, winter, or spring?
summer, fall, winter, or spring. Fall.
Favorite topic in history to study?
I would say the medieval time period.
Favorite gospel?
Well, that's a tough one. You expect me to answer this quick? Matthew.
Okay. Favorite game growing up? Video game or regular game? Card game.
Mm, mm. Card game, board game. Oh, Monopoly was a big one for me.
All right. In Emmitsburg, do you prefer the Grotto or the Elizabeth Ann Seton Basilica?
The Grotto.
Saint who you want to learn more about?
Um, hmm. I guess St. John Vianney. Uh, just my own personal experience that happened like 2 weeks ago with him. So
I'd love to
bit
hear more
more.
about that another time.
Sure, sure.
North or South dining hall?
South.
Current favorite passage in scripture?
Ooh, maybe just because I just studied it. Pontius Pilate and Christ in John, the Gospel of John, where he says, "I have written what I've written." In the Greek, it's particularly that he's the in the commentary that I read, she notes that this is the first time in Scripture where Pilate is saying that, yes, I've written what I've written, and that's it. He's the first, ironically, the first gospel writer to proclaim that Christ is the king of the Jews, the king of the universe, really. So it's ironic. I thought like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't think
Okay,
of it
thought
that
of that.
way.
Oh,
So I'm like, all right, I guess he is the first gospel writer to proclaim the good news.
no way. Uh, best Echo summer activity or game?
Best Echo Summer activity or game. I really enjoyed the I don't what was it called? The first game that we played, that was the game that was the icebreaker. Like that
I
our
don't.
first night, with the bases where we hit it with the ball, like
Oh,
that that fo
the
the faux
softball.
baseball.
Yeah, it was like wiffle ball.
The wiffle ball, wiffle ball.
Okay.
That was fun.
I've played that game with shaving cream in the ball. It's really fun that way.
Oh, that sounds fun.
A city that you want to visit that you've never been to.
Ooh, city. Any city in the world
Any
or
city in the world.
sure, I guess I'll go with Tokyo.
Perfect. Best part of Mount St. Mary's?
Best part about Mount St. Mary's. Uh the proximity to historical places and very holy places. You have the grotto and you have the Ascetan Shrine, and then just Elizabeth Ann Seton's presence everywhere, which is pretty cool.
And then there's also some connections to Blessed Stanley Rother too, which
Yes, yes, which I'll proudly proclaim that I went to his school.
oh, me too.
But
I tell people
yeah,
that all the time.
hmm
Even for 1 year, there's still.
for 1 year.
I have my transcripts. Uh,
Hmm.
all right. So last question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how creative is the name of the mascot, the Mountie Emmett S. Berg?
So 1 being the worst and 10 being the
Yeah.
best. 10 out of 10.
All right. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Dale.
Well, thank you, David, for coming on to Echoing Theology. This was the third episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, David, wonderful to see you.
Great seeing you as well, and thank you everyone for listening. I'm sure you probably got tired of my voice, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
Hey, I always appreciate when someone else is talking rather than myself. So, uh, well, thank you again, David, and be on the lookout for episode 4 as it drops. Have a good day, guys.
Wonderful.
God bless. Pope St. John Paul II. Pray for us.
Great for us.